Hi, my name is Daniel Mercer. I've never been good at introductions, but I guess if you're watching this, you need to know who I am. I'm 31 years old. I film things, not movies, not commercials, just places people forget about. The abandoned, the ruined, the things left behind when history decides it's done with them. Most people call it urban exploration. For me, it's survival. Ever since I was a kid, I've been drawn to the dark corners no one else wants to look at. Some kids were afraid of shadows. I chased them, and over time, I learned something. Shadows don't stay still. Sometimes they move when you don't. That's why I keep the camera running. Not for me, but so when something does move, when something's there that shouldn't be, I can prove it. This time, though, this time is different. This isn't just another forgotten hospital or a school where the walls echo children's laughter. This place has a name. It's called Ravenwood Institute, and the stories about it, well, they don't read like history. They read like warnings. Elena, my partner, the only person who hasn't told me I'm insane, she's coming with me tonight. She doesn't scare easy, but even she looked at me funny when I suggested Ravenwood. I don't blame her. The last known owner of that place? Professor Whitmore. The man wasn't just eccentric. He vanished 20 years ago after rambling about a gatekeeper. Some say he died inside the institute. Some say he's still there. I don't know what we'll find. But I do know this. If this footage makes it out, you'll see what I saw. And if I don't make it out, maybe someone will finally believe me. The drive out to Ravenwood took 2 hours. 2 hours of empty highway, fading radio signals, and Elena chewing on sunflower seeds to keep herself awake. We didn't talk much. That's the thing about places like this. You don't have to say anything. The silence builds its own weight. When we finally turned down the overgrown road, the headlights caught the gate. Rusted iron, bent inward like something had forced its way out. We stopped for a moment, engine idling, staring through the windshield at the outline of the building. Ravenwood Institute. From a distance, it didn't even look real. Its roofline was jagged, broken where the tiles had fallen away. Windows were either shattered or boarded up, black squares staring back at us like eyeless sockets. The whole structure leaned ever so slightly, like it had grown tired of holding itself up. Elena leaned forward, her breath fogging the glass. "Looks worse than the photos," she whispered. I nodded, gripping the wheel tighter than I meant to. Worse wasn't the word. The photos hadn't captured the air. Even with the car windows rolled up, I could feel it. That stillness. That unnatural kind of quiet where you swear the earth is holding its breath. I killed the engine, and instantly the silence swallowed us whole. No crickets, no wind, just nothing. Elena unbuckled, a flashlight already in hand. "Well," she said, trying for casual, "let's get this over with." I grabbed my camera. The one thing I trust more than my own memory. "Rolling already," I muttered. We stepped out into the night. Gravel crunched under our boots, each step far too loud. My light cut across weeds that had grown chest-high, curling around broken stone statues at the front of the institute. Angels, I think they were supposed to be, but their faces were melted with age and moss, wings chipped down to jagged stumps. The gate groaned when we pushed it open. It wasn't locked. That bothered me. The closer we got, the bigger the institute loomed. 3 stories of stone and shadow, with vines crawling up the walls like veins. Above the front entrance, the old nameplate still clung on. Ravenwood Institute, EST, 1907. Some of the letters had fallen off. Now it just read, Ravenwood Stit. Elena shivered. "That's welcoming." I forced a chuckle, but my stomach had already nodded. Places like this, they weren't just abandoned. They were hungry. And as I raised the camera to frame the front doors, I swore, just for half a second, that one of the upstairs windows flickered with movement, like someone pulling back a curtain. But when I looked again, it was gone. The front doors weren't locked either. They weren't even shut. One of them leaned half open, hinges rusted so bad I thought it would snap if we pushed too hard. Elena pressed her flashlight against the crack first, beam cutting into dust and shadow. Nothing moved, Nothing breathed. She glanced back at me. You ready? Number. But I nodded anyway. We stepped inside. The air was wrong, not just stale, but thick, like breathing in damp paper, every inhale clinging to the back of my throat. My light swept across the lobby, catching dust motes swirling like ash. The place must have been abandoned for decades, but somehow the smell was still sharp. Mildew, mold, and something sour underneath it. The floor tiles were checkered, cracked wide in places where weeds had pushed through. A reception desk slumped against the far wall, papers scattered across it in brittle, yellowed stacks. Chairs lay overturned, one of them snapped clean in half. The strangest part? No graffiti. Every other abandoned building I'd ever explored was tagged, vandalized, gutted, but not this one. It was untouched, like nobody had dared to stay long enough. Elena whispered, "Creepy, how clean it is." I nodded, scanning the walls. My camera caught flaking paint, framed portraits hanging crooked. Doctors, maybe? Men in starched white coats, eyes blurred with age. Their faces seemed to follow as I moved. We advanced down the main corridor. Our footsteps echoed too loudly, bouncing back at us like the walls were closer than they really were. Then, the sound. At first I thought it was my own breathing caught on playback, but no. It came from deeper down the hall. A whisper, thin, faint, like fabric brushing across the floor. I froze. Elena's beam darted toward me. "You heard that too, right?" she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Yeah." The whisper came again, but this time it was layered. Not just one voice. Dozens. Muted, overlapping, like a crowd behind a closed door. I swung the camera toward the sound, but the hallway stretched out empty. Dust. Broken lights. Elena clenched her jaw. Probably wind. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there were no broken windows, no airflow. And the whispers? They had stopped the moment we noticed them. We pressed on, reaching the stairwell at the far end. A faded sign read, "Ward, Arrow, Records Arrow." The stairwell door hung ajar. A gust of cold air drifted out, cutting through the humidity like ice water. Elena shivered. "Which way?" I lifted the camera, pretending to weigh the decision, but the truth is, I was already drawn downstairs. The stairwell yawned before us, a mouth cut into the floor. My flashlight beam caught the concrete steps vanishing into blackness. "Records are down there," I said, pointing to the faded sign. Elena hesitated. Basements are always a bad idea. She wasn't wrong, but that's where the stories always lead. Not the lobby, not the offices. The secrets hide in basements. We started down. Each step groaned under our weight, flakes of paint and rust falling from the rails. The deeper we went, the colder the air grew. Not just cool, damp. My breath puffed in front of me, fogging in the beam. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a long corridor lined with steel doors. Most stood ajar. Hinges rusted into red streaks. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, echoing like a slow clock. The first room we entered was small, ceiling low, filled wall to wall with filing cabinets. Papers littered the floor like snowdrifts. Edges curled. Ink bled away by time. I crouched, picking one up. The heading read, "Patient Intake, 1962. Beneath it, neat typewritten lines. Name, age, diagnosis. But halfway down, the text broke off, replaced with black ink slashes, like someone had furiously crossed it out. The whole stack was the same. Names destroyed, diagnoses erased. Elena leaned over my shoulder. "Why erase all this?" I shook my head, flipping through more. Some weren't crossed out, some were worse. Patient, 014, age 9. Diagnosis, sleep disturbances, symptoms, reports, the faceless man. At bedside, screams persist after sedation, refuses food. The rest of the page had been torn away. My skin prickled. I shoved it back into the pile. In the far corner of the room, a larger file box sat on a desk. dust thick on its lid, but no cobwebs. I lifted it carefully. Inside, tucked between folders, lay a slim, leather-bound journal. The cover bore one word in faded gold leaf: Whitmore. My throat tightened. Professor Whitmore, the last owner, the man who vanished. I flipped it open. Neat, cramped handwriting filled the pages. Notes, sketches, symbols I didn't recognize. Circles intersecting with jagged lines, shapes like eyes without pupils. One entry stopped me cold. The entity responds to the forgotten. It whispers only where silence has long settled. The institute itself has become a vessel, a gate. The patients fed it first, but the structure has learned hunger. Elena hovered at my side. Daniel, that's not history. That's obsession. I swallowed hard. The words burned behind my eyes, because even as she said it, I realized something. The whispering had started again. Not faint this time, not distant. It was here, in the basement, surrounding us. Elena spun, light sweeping the dark corridor. Tell me that's the pipes. But I couldn't, because layered within the whispers, I heard my own name. Daniel. The whispers crawled along the basement walls, thin at first, then swelling into something layered and wrong, like a dozen mouths murmuring at once, all out of sync. Elena gripped my arm, her flashlight beam jittering across the corridor. Daniel, this isn't the pipes. Tell me this is the pipes I wanted to lie. But the journal in my hand felt heavy, alive almost, and the words I just read kept thrumming in my skull. The institute itself has learned hunger. I snapped the book shut and shoved it into my backpack. We need to keep moving. That's when the first door slammed. Metal on concrete, a violent, echoing crack that rattled dust from the ceiling. Elena yelped, spinning her beam toward the sound. A filing room door had shut itself, latch still trembling. Wind, I muttered, though my voice shook. Then a second door slammed, farther down the hall, then another, each one louder, closer, chasing us. Elena grabbed my sleeve. Daniel, what the hell is that? Before I could answer, my camera flickered. The display warped, pixels bleeding red and green before cutting out entirely. I slapped it, smacked the side. Nothing. Just static. Then Elena's flashlight began to die. The beam sputtered, weak and yellow, shadows swelling wider with each flicker. She shook it hard. No, 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 not now. That's when the corridor fell silent. Not just quiet, empty. The whispers stopped. The dripping stopped. Even the creak of the pipes vanished. It was so still I could hear my heartbeat thudding in my ears. And then, from behind us, the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy. Elena froze, her lips mouthed, "Someone's down here." I turned, camera raised, though the lens was dead. My own flashlight beam shook across the corridor, catching dust, broken tiles, empty air. But the steps kept coming. Steady, measured, like whatever, it was wanted us to hear every inch of their approach. Closer, closer. Elena's nails dug into my arm. I see nothing. Why can't I see it? Then, for the briefest second, the beam caught it. Not a man, not even close. A figure, stretched too tall for the corridor, shoulders scraping the ceiling. Its arms hung too long, fingers grazing the floor as it walked. Its head turned toward me, though there were no eyes, only skin stretched smooth, mouth open in a silent grin. And then the flashlight cut out. Darkness swallowed us whole. The footsteps stopped. For a heartbeat, I thought it was gone. But then, right by my ear, a voice whispered, "Not Elena's, not mine." Daniel, the whisper brushed against my ear like cold breath. And then, silence. Elena's flashlight sputtered back to life, weak but glowing. The corridor stretched out empty again, filing cabinets looming like rows of gravestones. No figure, no footsteps, just dust swirling in the beam. I could barely breathe. My chest heaved like I'd been underwater too long. Elena's face was pale, her jaw tight. She whispered, We need to get out. Now I opened my mouth to agree. And that's when a voice came from deeper in the basement. Not a whisper this time. Clear, sharp, human. You shouldn't have taken the journal. Elena's light whipped toward the sound. A figure stepped out from the shadows at the far end of the hall. An older man, thin, stooped, dressed in a tweed jacket that looked 50 years out of date. His face was lined deep, gray stubble across his jaw, wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. But his eyes, God, his eyes, were alive. Too alive. Bright with feverish energy that didn't belong to someone who should have been dead 20 years. I recognized him instantly. Professor Whitmore. He smiled, teeth yellow in the beam. So they still remember my name? Elena tensed. That's impossible. You're dead? He interrupted, tilting his head. That depends on your definition. I am here, am I not? He shuffled closer, shoes scraping the concrete. His hands twitched at his sides, fingers curling and uncurling like he was itching to grab something. You read it, didn't you? He said, nodding toward my backpack. The journal. You know what dwells here? I swallowed hard. The entity. Whitmore's smile stretched. Entity. Guardian. It depends who's speaking. The patients feared it. The doctors tried to medicate it. But me? I learned from it. Elena hissed. Learned what? His eyes gleamed behind the glasses. That death is not an end. That silence itself has appetite. That if you listen long enough. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. It listens back. My hands shook around the useless camera. Why are you still here? Because I am its tether, Whitmore said simply, spreading his arms. I keep it bound to Ravenwood. Without me, it would wander. Elena's jaw tightened. You mean you feed it? Whitmore chuckled, a dry rasp that echoed down the hall. Sacrifice is such a cruel word. I preserve it. I keep the gate closed. But you... He jabbed a trembling finger at me. You bring disruption. Filming, probing, taking. Do you know what that does to it? The whispers began again. Faint, circling, crawling along the walls. Whitmore tilted his head, listening like one might to a favorite song. It stirs. It hungers. Elena grabbed my arm. Daniel, we're leaving. But Whitmore's smile widened, showing too many teeth. Oh no, he said softly. You're staying. Both of you. The Institute needs new voices. Whitmore's grin froze, his body stiffening like a puppet with its strings yanked. For the first time since he stepped out of the shadows, I saw fear in his eyes. The whisper surged, louder now, not murmurs, but voices. Dozens, hundreds, layered over one another in a deafening chorus. My head throbbed with the sound like nails scraping my skull. Whitmore staggered, clutching his chest. His glasses slipped down his nose, eyes rolling white. No, no, not now. His words broke into a wet choke. Elena backed away. Daniel, what's happening to him? I couldn't answer, because I already knew. The thing he'd been tethering wasn't content with its leash anymore. Whitmore collapsed to his knees, wheezing. His hands clawed at his own throat as though something was tightening around it. Then his body jerked violently, spittle flying from his mouth. The whispers stopped, and in the silence, Whitmore lifted his head. His eyes were gone, nothing but empty sockets, black and glistening. His mouth stretched wider than it should have, skin splitting at the corners as a deep, hollow voice spilled out. A voice that wasn't his. We are many. We are silence. And silence must feed. The temperature dropped so fast my breath plumed white. My camera snapped on by itself, lens glowing blood red, recording even though the battery was dead. Whitmore's body convulsed, bones cracking like dry wood, his limbs elongated, jerking unnaturally, his voice layered with others, breaking apart into shrieks and guttural moans. Elena screamed, yanking me backward. We need to go. But the corridor shifted. I swear to God, it shifted. The walls seemed to bend, stretching longer, doors folding inward until the exit was gone. The thing wearing Whitmore lurched forward, dragging its limbs across the floor. Its grin, too wide, too sharp, split its face into something inhuman. My chest seized, panic clawed up my throat. This wasn't just possession. This was release. The entity wasn't bound anymore. Elena's flashlight blew out in a burst of sparks. Darkness swallowed us, except for the faint glow from my camera lens. In that crimson light, the figure of Professor Whitmore. No, the thing inside him crawled toward us on all fours, its voice rattling every bone in my body. Your voices will join ours. Elena yanked me by the arm, dragging me down the corridor as Whitmore's body cracked and lurched behind us, bones snapping like tree branches in a storm. "Move, Daniel!" she screamed. We ran, boots slamming against concrete, the air freezing, whispers closing in from every direction. My camera swung wildly against my chest, still glowing red like an open wound. We hit the stairwell. The metal door loomed ahead. Elena shoved it open and froze. It wasn't the stairwell. It was another hallway, identical to the one we'd just left. Same cracked tiles, same filing cabinets, same rotten stench of mold and dust. "No, no, no," she whispered, backing away. "This isn't possible." I stumbled in after her, chest heaving. "It's looping." She grabbed my shoulders, eyes wild. "Buildings don't loop, Daniel." But Ravenwood wasn't just a building anymore. I could feel it. The walls breathing, the corridors stretching, the institute reshaping itself like clay around us. The whispers swelled again, louder, closer, brushing against the backs of our necks. Behind us, a guttural shriek tore through the dark. Whitmore's voice, but not his. A chorus of voices twisting through his throat, shrill and hungry. We ran again. Doors lined the hallway, each one identical, each one locked. Elena kicked one, then another, fists slamming against the wood. Nothing budged. "Try something," she shouted. I swung the camera up. The lens was still glowing, and through it, the world flickered. For just a second, the corridor wasn't empty. Shadows darted along the walls, eyeless faces pressed against the cracked plaster, mouths moving silently. The voices in my head hissed, "Keep filming. Don't stop. Keep filming." "Elena," I gasped, lowering the camera. "It wants me to record." She snapped at me. "Then smash it." But my hands refused to let go. My knuckles whitened around the strap, chest heaving. The more I held it, the more it felt like part of me. Another shriek ripped the air. Whitmore, or the thing inside him, was closer now. The shadows warped at the end of the corridor, something massive bending itself through the frame of a doorway, joints cracking. Elena grabbed my arm. "Daniel, door, there." One door at the far end stood slightly ajar. Light bled through the crack. Not flashlight light, not electric. Candlelight. We sprinted. My lungs screamed, legs burning. The whispers grew deafening, my name hissing in 1,000 overlapping tones. We hit the door, shoved it open, and spilled inside. The room was round, stone walls lined with melted candle stubs. And at the center, carved into the floor, was a massive circle of symbols, the same ones I'd seen in Whitmore's journal. But the worst part wasn't the circle. It was what stood inside it. The circle of symbols burned into my eyes as soon as we stepped inside the stone chamber. Candles flickered, though there was no wind. Shadows stretched and twisted across the walls, writhing like living things. Elena stumbled to my side, gasping, her flashlight flickering weakly. "Daniel, what is this?" Before I could answer, the thing, Whitmore, the entity, stepped fully into the chamber. Its body had stretched impossibly, limbs scraping the ceiling, face a smooth void with that sickening grin. "Step aside," it rasped. Its voice was layered, multiple tones at once, Whitmore's, others I didn't recognize, screaming, whispering, laughing. Elena's hand gripped mine. "We can't fight it. Daniel, we can't." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to do something. But my legs felt glued to the stone floor, heart pounding like it would burst. The entity's head tilted toward Elena. It reached out, arm stretching like rope, hand closing around her shoulder. "Elena!" I screamed, lunging forward. She tried to pull free, but its grip was iron. She looked back at me, eyes wide, terrified, and mouthed, "Run." I couldn't. My legs refused, paralyzed by horror. The entity's fingers wrapped around her, and then the whispers surged into a roar. Candle flames snapped higher, shadows twisting into forms I can't describe. Then she was gone. Just gone. The spot where she had been was empty. Only a faint echo of her scream lingered, bouncing off the stone walls. My camera, still strapped to my chest, captured nothing but darkness. I fell to my knees, clawing at the floor, shouting her name. The entity turned toward me slowly, and for a heartbeat, I thought it would come for me too. Then it retreated. Not gone, just waiting. The chamber fell silent again. The candles flickered, and in the shadows, I saw shapes moving, whispers forming solid shapes, as if the walls themselves were alive. I don't know how long I stayed there, sobbing, unable to move, unable to breathe. And then I realized the Institute wasn't letting me leave. Hi, my name is Daniel Mercer. I don't know how many times I've said that tonight, but it doesn't matter anymore. The words are all I have left, and even they are starting to slip away. Ravenwood Institute. It doesn't just consume the living. It consumes memory, time, identity. The longer you stay, the more it folds you into itself. I thought I could escape. I thought I could get Elena out. I thought my camera could protect me. I was wrong. The last thing I saw was her face. Elena, reaching toward me, mouth open in a silent scream, disappearing into the entity's grasp. I tried to grab her, tried to fight, but Ravenwood's halls bend around themselves. Doors that led to freedom became walls. Hallways looped endlessly. And now, I am alone, mostly. The camera is still recording. Its lens glows red, like the heartbeat of the building itself. It tells me to speak. It tells me to document. It wants me to document. So I speak. If anyone finds this, know that I'm here. I'm here, and I can't leave. The entity waits, always, at the edges of vision and sound. It watches me. It listens. And it feeds. I thought I was recording to survive. But maybe I'm recording for it. Every word I say, every movement I make, is now part of the Institute. My name, my story, part of the endless hunger that Ravenwood feeds. I hear footsteps behind me. I don't look. I lift the camera, record one last time, and speak. Hi, my name is Daniel Mercer. The entity is here. I can feel it pressing closer. And I know, somehow, that if you watch this, you are next. Because Ravenwood doesn't stop. It never stops. And now, neither do I.
Thank you for watching C&T Horror Stories. Please like and subscribe for more stories.